enforcement trends. There wasn't any one particular year where all of a sudden crime started to go off the charts. It didn't happen. What you had was a very slow erosion over time in a few particular offense areas where crime was steadily going up. And it makes sense for a city every once in a while to kind of take stock of itself and say, okay, things are starting to get to a level where we're not comfortable with them anymore. You can have all the amenities that you want. If the reputation of the city is not that it's safe, people won't move into it. Doesn't matter whether they're single, raising a family, doesn't matter, they won't come here. And in my opinion, Lakewood has regained a lot of the reputation that it enjoyed for many years for being a very safe community. Let me tell you what our basic strategy was. First of all, we had about an 18-point public safety strategy, and I won't go through all 18 points, but it boils down to just a couple things. First of all, we made an investment with the money we saved from reducing our personnel, and we put some of those resources in the police department, and we increased the number of police officers. We're the only community in Northeast Ohio that dramatically increased the police force in the last couple of years. No other community did it. Many communities cut police officers during this period of time. We're the only ones that did it, and that message has gotten out there. Secondly, we incorporated those police officers into a community policing strategy. We opened up 4 neighborhood police offices, and we used them in non-traditional ways to respond to quality of life neighborhood complaints. This is an example of where we're at right now. We're at over 100 right now authorized. We're close to 100 police officers now. That's down from under 90 when we started. These are just a few of our officers. So what's the result then? We knew, Chief Malley and I talk on that usually on a daily basis on what's happening and what's out there in the community. And there are many negative stories. I mean, there are many examples of very serious crimes, and we're still not as safe as I want us to be. But we knew over a year ago that the statistics were starting to come back that showed that what we were doing was working. And we never really publicized it, and we or to very little extent, because we wanted to see if it really was a trend. We didn't want to declare that it had succeeded until we could see if really it was paying off and that we had a longer trend line. And so today I'm going to share some statistics with you that we've never really released to the public, but I think are very significant, because at this point I've seen enough anecdotally, I've heard from enough neighborhood groups, and I have seen enough statistics that I believe that our strategy is working. Let me give you just a couple of examples. Arson down 75%. Auto thefts down 21%. We use 2006 as a baseline. By the way, if you saw the whole trend line, you would see generally things trending up from around 1999. Like I said, it didn't happen all in 1 year. 45% reduction in gun crimes from 2006. Those are the crimes that really sent kind of a shockwave through the community. So this is a very important statistic. Robberies down 43% from 2006. Murders down to nothing from a high. Actually, our high was 2007. We had 4. It's been almost 2 years since there was a homicide in the city. Are things where we want them to be yet? No. But they are absolutely heading in the right direction. Total number of service calls. There's a lot of ways to measure crime, but one of the best measures is, are people calling up and saying there is a crime being committed? Not whether the crime gets solved, not whether the person is captured. All those things can affect your statistics. But are they calling and asking for service? There's been an 18% reduction since 2002, and a rather dramatic reduction since 2007. By the way, nationwide there has been a downturn in crime rates, but it's averaged about 2%. So most cities have experienced some decline. I don't know of another city that's looked at declines like this across the board. If it exists, I haven't heard of it. we have a number of issues with our housing stock in this city, and one of the first things that we tried to do was, again, look at our internal policies and procedures before we felt like we could really affect the housing stock. The first thing that we looked at, therefore, was our internal processes of the building department to streamline those operations. First of all, working with our technology department, we started implementing new software, which is just coming online now. It allows us to track properties quicker, and it's going to save us paperwork and make us more productive in the building department. The administrative process, we were averaging about 6 months before a case would even get to court. And that obviously was not acceptable. And we cut that down now to, we have a goal of trying to get things resolved within 30 days and sometimes as quickly as 2 days. So it's 2 to 30 days is our new framework as opposed to 6 months. Now, why was it like that? It was overly bureaucratic. It was very heavily ensconced in paperwork. And we have just a surplus of administrative appeals that certain people, especially repeat offenders, knew how to work the system and were taking advantage of the system. And one of the things that has really warmed my heart is that some of those individuals have told some folks in our building department, hey, I used to be able to get all kinds of time to work with this, and all of a sudden I'm having to respond to your requests, and these are people that have been repeat offenders, so they are getting the message, and they're starting to comply because they know when they get a summons from us, they're leaving business card. Our whole focus has been on repeat offenders. If somebody is a homeowner that's just having some difficulty, we will try to work with them. If somebody is a landlord, they own multiple properties, and their properties are problems, then we are going to take more of an aggressive stand on enforcement. Let's talk about nuisance properties. Certain properties that are just being maintained as a nuisance, they're dragging down the property values of the city. First of all, we passed a new nuisance property ordinance, or I should say city council did, which we proposed, and that has dramatically increased our ability to fine and try to get reimbursement from property owners where we are repeatedly moving on those properties. Secondly, when it comes to CMHA, there are certain regulations and rules that CMHA properties have to follow, and we have a dedicated staff person that tracks that and makes sure that they don't just follow our building code but also their own internal regulations. And our whole theme is that we're trying to hold landlords accountable. If a landlord is renting to an irresponsible tenant, the only way to get their attention is to make them financially accountable. Otherwise, they'll throw their hands up and say, well, I'm sorry, I can't control my tenant. Well, then you need to look at whether or not that person should be a tenant in the city of Lakewood. Lakewood is open to everybody. It doesn't matter where you come from, who you are, what your background is. Everybody can live here, but you have to follow the rules. You have to follow our codes. You have to follow our laws. You have to follow the rules of civil society. And if you don't do that, and you are being a nuisance to your neighbors, then somebody is going to pay a financial price for that. What this has resulted in is a financial disincentive for a landlord to rent to an irresponsible tenant. And what it means is, for the first time, really, in Lakewood history, now all of a sudden the pressure is on the landlord, and it's resulting in evictions of individuals that refuse to play by the rules. Substandard housing. We have a number of properties that just were not viable properties anymore. We